Welcome to The Buzz. We start with Starr Ackerman. She's a musician, a public relations manager, and an artist relations manager for a variety of companies, including IK Multimedia and Musicians First. She shares the latest in music and digital technology with us tonight. Then James Castle Stevens is an actor who got his first LA gig working for Star Trek: The Next Generation. James brings his actor's perspective to discuss what directors need to know to make their actors better. And then Kali Poseria is a leading-edge young cinematographer with a love of movement who does a lot of work in music videos and independent feature films. She takes us behind the scenes tonight of her new music video, Skylar Reed's I'm Doing It. We have a brand new Tech Talk featuring new features in Adobe Premiere Pro, and Randy Altman joins us with her perspective on the news. The Buzz starts now.
Tonight's Digital Production Buzz is brought to you by Otherworld Computing at MacSales.com.
Since the dawn of digital filmmaking,
authoritative.
One show serves a worldwide network of media professionals.
Current.
Uniting industry experts,
Production.
filmmakers,
Post-production.
and content creators around the planet.
Distribution.
From the media capital of the world in Los Angeles, California, the Digital Production Buzz goes live now.
And welcome to the Digital Production Buzz, the world's longest-running podcast for creative content producers covering media production, post-production, and marketing around the world. Our co-host, Mike Horton, has the night off. The Buzz is evolving, and I'm pleased with the feedback that we've been getting on the changes that we're making. For instance, a very popular request is for more product demos. So in addition to our regular interviews, we're adding a new Tech Talk section. These short demos allow us to showcase techniques that don't require a lot of time to explain. Tonight, we've got one featuring the new version of Adobe Premiere and Adobe Audition. And thinking of media, here in California, we have another problem because of our severe drought. Earlier today, KTLA-TV reported that an unmanned drone shut down evening aerial firefighting operations over the lake fire. The fixed-wing drone was flying about 900 feet above the ground. However, drones are not permitted over 400 feet. Worse, the area was under a federal temporary flight restriction, making all drone operations in the fire area illegal. The problem is that if a drone is spotted, water-dropping aircraft must vacate the area for crew safety. The early flight shutdown allowed the fire to expand another 3.5 square miles overnight. Another drone was spotted yesterday over the Lake Arrowhead fire, and again, flight operations shut down hours early, causing the fire to spread. Flying a drone over a wildfire may yield great footage, but the risks of delaying firefighting operations, even causing loss of life, make this a very foolish activity. And in other news, last week, we introduced Randy Altman's perspective. This is a news segment, and we continue with it this week. Our goal with these segments is to cover breaking news along with Randy's thoughts on other important stories of the week. This is Perspective. Randy Altman has been covering the post-production industry for more than 20 years. For more than 10 of those, she was the editor-in-chief of Post magazine. Now she runs her own website called postperspective.com. Hello, Randy. Welcome back.
Hi, Larry. Thanks for inviting me back.
Well, we had so much fun talking about the news with you last week. I want to do the same thing again this week. What's the big news story today?
Well, as a follow-up to what the big news was last week, the release of the Adobe Creative Suite 2015, there was a lot of excitement, but this week we're starting to hear about a few hiccups, mostly in the name of plugin incompatibility with the new versions of After Effects and Premiere. So users are being warned not to overwrite their 2014 versions, and while plugin companies are trying to get it together, currently a couple few are working, like Maxon Cinema 4D and Boris FX's Continuum, but the rest are following.
Randy, is there a place people can go to get a list of what plugins are compatible?
Yes, they could go to toolfarm.com, and they are a reseller of plugins. They could go there and see a list of compatible plugins that are available now.
I should mention that we have compatibility issues both with Premiere and with After Effects. Keep in mind also that I've been reading that Premiere file format for 2015 is different than the file format for 2014. So once you upgrade to 2015, you won't be able to move back. Randy, the other big news this week has been Taylor Swift and her blog about Apple Music. What have you been hearing?
That's right. Taylor Swift took Apple to task on social media, and Apple reacted pretty swiftly, no pun intended. The artists whose music is going to be shared by Apple for the first 3 months of their trial period will now be paid for their work, which is incredibly important, especially to this industry. There was a time when VFX studios were doing elaborate bids for visual effects work and not getting the bids and not getting paid, and it took a big toll on some studios. So I think that we're going in the right direction with this decision.
Do you think this is a change in policy for Apple, or do you think it's a giant PR strategy?
With Apple, you never know. I could go either way. It could go either way.
What other news has been hot this week?
The other news that happened this week is Avid completed its acquisition of ORAD. They are a 3D real-time graphics company that also provides video servers and workflow management solutions. So they're hoping to integrate the ORAD technology into their own Avid Media Central platform.
So Avid now owns ORAD. It's a 100% acquisition?
Correct. Completed this week.
I know you've got tons of stuff to do, and your newsletter is about ready to publish, so we'll let you go, but we'll bring you back next week and find out what the latest news is. Randy, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Larry. Much appreciated.
To read more from Randy Altman, visit postperspective.com.
We recorded that segment late yesterday. As a follow-up to Randy's story on Apple Music, this afternoon, Taylor Swift announced, quote, "After the events of this week, I've decided to put my album, 1989, on Apple Music, and happily so," close quote. Also, holdout music licensing groups Merlin and Beggars Group both announced agreements with Apple Music on Tuesday. I'll be back with Starr Ackerman right after this. Our friends at Otherworld Computing are looking for a creative, fan-made commercial. So they're hosting a video contest with an incredible grand prize, a dream video workstation. This prize package includes a 2013 Apple Mac Pro and a 4K display, an Avid Artist transport console and color control surface, a 16-terabyte OWC Thunderbay 4, a GoPro Hero, and more. The whole package is worth over $12,000. Whether you're a seasoned pro shooting with high-end gear or a newcomer shooting with your iPhone, now you can show off your video-making talent in a 30 to 60-second commercial about OWC. The deadline for entries is June 30th, so start shooting. Visit macsales.com/video-contest for all the details. That's macsales.com. Don't miss out. Starr Ackerman is a musician as well as a public relations and artist relations manager for music production software and hardware companies. She has an international reputation and joins us tonight to showcase the latest digital and mobile technology for music, podcasting, and network audio. Hello, Starr. It is good to have you with us. Oh, and I wanted to ask, before we got started, do you view yourself more as a musician or as a manager?
I'm a musician at heart, but I truly want to be able to spread the wave and inspire people to make music. So if that means managing the musician wave for the rest of the time that I'm alive, and that's my art, and that's my contribution to humanity, great.
Wearing your musician hat, what do you see as the future of new technology? Clearly, apps and all the stuff that we need to create music has gotten much cheaper and much easier to access, both in terms of hardware and distribution. What's the future?
I believe in the power of computer music, and I have for about as soon as I was introduced to it. And that was more than 15 years ago when I was able to take a CD-ROM and remix someone else's stuff. And I was introduced to it then. I believe in the power of computer music. So when you have more and more powerful computers, and those are your phones and your tablets and your devices, you actually have access to music making products, software, and then also the connectors. So the mobility really is the future. When you can fit all of your stuff into a backpack and get on the plane and make music and then send it because you're working for Survivor. That's, one of IQ Multimedia's first adopters of one of our iOS programs called BuZZ. He was sending his music cues to Survivor, and they were playing them right away. I mean, he was doing it from the plane. He was making them all the plane. So the future is really just more power to your computers of your mobile devices and more knowledge, in the industry of being able to get to that.
It sounds like you're saying that the technology allows us to extend our creativity as opposed to simply alter the sound. Is that a true statement?
Yeah.
Now, are these audio filters or are these sample clips, or what is it exactly that we're getting, and who are the customers for IK Multimedia?
That's a loaded question. All right, so that's a three-part question. All right, so we do have basically filtering products, the core, to say it properly. We have emulation products where you feed a signal in, and then it sounds like whatever you want it to sound like. So plug your guitar into your iPhone, and then you can set a preset and for a Jimi Hendrix song it's all along the watchtower, and then you have the exact same tone as that in Amplitude. Amplitude is one of the leading applications for Mac and PC for all guitar and bass players. And it was ported to iOS. It was actually even on Steve Jobs' iPad when he had the keynote speech and showed the iPad to the world. Mm-hmm. Amplitude was on his iPad when he showed it to the world.
Very cool.
So we've had fans. It's been around a long time. It was the pro audio, but now we made it consumer. So anyone can make music, and we really want to keep continuing the wave.
One of the things that you guys were doing is you recently made some announcements about mobile technology. What are you doing there?
Mobile technology? Well, IQ Multimedia is a leader in mobile technology. We have every connector and application available for musicians, broadcasters, podcasters, etc. There's over 78 music creation and broadcasting applications from IQ Multimedia just in iOS alone. Now we are making everything for the Android market as well because we solved the latency issue with the iRead UI.
Would you consider the products that you're doing are designed for people who are getting into music and I want to say amateurs for lack of a better word, or is it for the high-end market, or do you span the spectrum?
Well, in the beginning, we were pro audio. So we've been in business for 19 years. And so it was, a select group of people, studio musicians that were paying $500, $600 for, an application that had maybe 6-7 gigabytes of material samples so they could play to their Mac or PC and, really use the software. And when I'm talking about the software samples, as you asked before, Eminem BuZZ Yourself, that was made with Sample Tank. That's one of our products. That was for Mac and PC. And at the time, Sample Tank was, $500. Now you can get Sample Tank on your iPhone for $20, and it has 500 sounds in it.
I was reflecting, the company's been in business for 19 years, and you've been doing music for a while. How is the business side, as opposed to the creative side, but how's the business side of music changed in your world over the last, say, 5 years? Can artists still make a living with music?
Yes, artists can still make a living doing music. They just have to keep perfecting their art and keep touring and keep building. The one thing the most important thing to remember is that when you take it into the consumer side, where, it's not just pro audio anymore. Now, anyone with an iPhone or an iPad, an iPod Touch, or an Android can now make music. Where the software and the hardware used to cost a lot of money. The interfaces cost $400. The software costs $500 an app. Now it costs $20 for an app, or it's a free app. And then the interface, at the very lowest is $39 for an iRig. So guitar players can plug into their phone. The very first iPod commercial was someone playing their phone with a guitar was iRig and Amplitude. In that time, there's been over 25 million downloads of Amplitude in the USA alone.
But I was just thinking, in the controversy over the last week over Apple Music and its non-payment and ultimately payment of royalties, the business side and the streaming, the amount of money that artists receive from streaming sites is so small on a per song basis that the way to make up for it is through volume, having lots of people listen to a song. But many artists aren't high-volume artists. What do you recommend they do to get their music heard so that they can earn a living? Or is it all just concerts?
I believe in the power of just creativity and pure talent. And if you really are good at what you do, you're going to see every part of it. And some musicians out there, they're just musicians, and that's all they can do. But some musicians out there have a little bit more sense, and they're trying to market themselves. But truly, playing out and getting yourself out there is the best way right now to be able to make a living at what you're doing. Because, monetizing the system of, record sales has definitely decreased, revenue overall. I mean, all the major record labels are, I don't want to say anything bad about them. I'm just saying they're not the moguls they were before. So at this point, you have to think, touring, you can make a lot of money.
There's a wide spectrum of musicians that are recording, and you're on the electronic side, and it ranges from that all the way back through traditional music. How important is it for musicians to keep up on the constantly changing technology, or can you adopt a technology and stay with it for a while?
The best thing for musicians to do now is to embrace technology for what it is. You have a computer in your pocket. It's a phone. It is better than a computer that you had 3 years ago, a laptop. So you also have the ability to plug into that phone with any connector that you need. And you can record and do everything, and you can even use web applications with other people around the world to collaborate. You can upload it all through TuneCore. You can be your own record label, and you can make your own money. You don't even need to you don't have to have a middleman. You can call up the venue yourself, send them your demo or just one song and get a gig. They're just waiting. The booking agents are just waiting for talent to come in. When we were doing EDM, when I was doing EDM, that's what I did. And we got booked every time.
And what projects are you working on next? What can we look forward to from a musical point of view from you?
Well, I recently got back into playing acoustic guitar because IQ Multimedia has come out with some interesting stereo field night stuff. And now I can just set up an iPhone and write on my iPhone script and then just sit there and play and come up with ideas on the fly. And then I replay it. I'm like, you know what? This is good. I think I want to, keep this and then build upon it. So then I'll take the audio out of that and I'll go and I'll create on top of that. So when you have the technology available to you, even if it's just a short iRig mic field, or even just an iRig mic cast, which is like a $40 microphone, you have your options are limited. But creativity is all in the mind of the person. And making music is all about your emotions. So wherever you are, mobility is key. So if I'm in a hotel room, or I'm in New York City walking down the street, as long as I have my phone, as long as I have a microphone in the back of my pocket, which is just an iRig mic field, I'm already ready.
And
I can do vocals.
And Starr, what website can people go to learn more?
If you would like to know more about IQ Multimedia's products for mobility and music creation, the apps and accessories for Android, iOS, Mac, and PC, please visit ikmultimedia.com.
That's ikmultimedia.com. Starr Ackerman is with IK Multimedia. Starr, thanks for joining us. Hi. I have an exciting new training bundle called The Craft of Production. In it, we cover interview techniques, how to use cameras to tell stories, how to pick microphones and record better audio, and tips on lighting. Watch as we work on set and outdoors with actors and crew to show behind-the-scenes techniques you can put to work immediately. See the difference camera framing makes. Listen to different microphones to decide which sounds the best. Learn better ways to ask questions, and see how changing the lighting changes the emotion of your scene. More than 4 hours of in-depth practical production techniques, and even better, we're bundling a session created by Norman Holland called Get to Your First Cut. Norman is a world-renowned feature film editor, as well as the head of the editing track at the USC Film School. He shares his thoughts on how to get your production dailies ready to edit. I specifically selected these titles because they're comprehensive, fun to watch, and only available here. I enjoy teaching technology, but I really like showing technology in action as we put it to work in the real world. Get your copy of The Craft of Production here in my store. James Castle Stevens is currently the Director of Marketing for my company, Larry Jordan Associates, Inc., and the Digital Production Buzz. Prior to that, though, he spent 16 years in Los Angeles as a professional actor. He started by studying with notable instructors like F. Murray Abraham and John Lancie, but James soon started working on such television shows as Star Trek: The Next Generation, The Drew Carey Show, The King of Queens, and Heroes. Welcome, James. Good to have you with us.
It's great to be here.
What do you consider the most valuable qualities for a successful actor?
Tenacity is number one. I mean, because, we're talking about there's acting, which is the art and the fun and the joy, and then there's the business. I mean, they don't call it show fun. They call it show business. So tenacity is number one. Absolutely.
And coping with rejection, I'm sure, has got to be number two.
Absolutely. You have to start to realize as an actor that you're a product. And, that's not to say that it can be that separate from yourself. You are a product, but you're also you. So you have to start to compartmentalize a little bit, realize that you're selling a product, but at the same time, be yourself. That's an interesting balancing act.
Well, one of the things that you have is a unique perspective because you're both an actor and a director, especially working in theater as opposed to film and television. And from an actor's point of view, what makes a good director, say for film and TV, casting back to your Star Trek or Heroes days?
Jeez, yeah. And of course it changes for everybody and it changes on the situation. For me, though, one of the best qualities that a director would have is letting you do what you do first. You know what I mean? They allow you to try something, allow you to do your best first choice. A lot of directors will come from different parts of, the entertainment industry, like editors, for instance, or a writer, and sometimes the writer has a very specific idea of this is how I want it to be, this is how I wrote it. And then they start directing and they're not saying, hey, go play, show me something, show me what your first choice is. They just, this is how I want you to do it. And they'll just tell you right flat out, they'll put you in a box right off the bat. And it kind of it crushes all creativity. The directors, I find that usually the one quality I like the most is when they kind of go, okay, this is nice and easy. Let's take it easy. Let's just go ahead and let's play. Let's try this. And of course, if they don't get what they want, if they don't get a good choice, and they go, okay, now that they've seen something, they go, okay, I see what you did. Great. Let's try this then. Let's see if we can bring it into the world that I want you to bring it into rather than what you did yourself.
Well, one of the things that I've heard, although not always followed, is the admonition that directors should not give line readings. Why not?
Yeah. First of all, because you're kind of stepping on the actor's bailiwick. This is his or hers arena. And by giving a line reading, you're basically saying, do it exactly like this, which is kind of per what I was just saying before. Interpretation is incredibly important. And if the director says, do it just like this, you've just quelched all type of creativity out of the process. It's more than that, too. There's obviously egos involved and things like that as well. But part of it also is the director may not be the best person to give that line reading. You may do it exactly the way the director asked, and the director will still be unsatisfied because it wasn't necessarily a good reading.
In other words, the director may not be able to act.
That does happen, yes.
Well, give me an example of a director that you've worked with that you enjoyed working with. What was their style that you liked?
There's several. Jonathan Frakes on Star Trek was a good example. He is a very fun-loving guy. You never got the impression that he took anything seriously, although obviously the job got done. You know, he was doing Star Trek, he did the movies after that. You know, you're doing 8 days of work to get an hour program recorded. And he's working with, all these actors and all these technical folks and special effects that have to come afterward and all these considerations. And he seems like he's just having a ball. And he's joking and he's laughing and he's, taking time to be silly and he's encouraging goofiness on the set. And you're like, how does anything get done? But because, first of all, these are very professional folks. And when it came time to do what you had to do, you get it done. And then let's go enjoy ourselves. It made for a really, really enjoyable experience on the set. Another director I might mention would be Rob Schiller. He directs for sitcoms primarily. And he really just affable, easygoing, soft-spoken, not a screamer, as is sometimes the case. Was just super nice, very kind, and, would come over and quietly whisper something to you to say, I'd like you to try something a little more like this. And you really got the feeling that you were collaborating with him rather than just being told, hey, go, louder, funnier, He was really, really intimate with it, and it was very nice.
Well, what are things that are mistakes? And you don't necessarily need to name names because I want to have you stay employed in the industry, but where have they been not helpful?
Yeah, usually... I'm thinking of someone in particular, and if he ever watches this, he'll probably know I'm talking about him because he's a friend. He's a very nice person off set, but he was very abrasive. He's a yeller. He likes to drama. He ran a set like a Greek wedding, a lot of screaming, a lot of emotions, and like a Greek wedding, probably a lot of love in there too. And if you were on the set for a long time, you knew this. You knew that it was just a lot of bark, not a lot of bite, and it was just the way he liked to work. It was very explosive, very, very emotional. But I don't find that to be very, very helpful to anybody who came on who was new. Certainly if you were new to the industry, you're probably, what is going on with this man? Why is he screaming at me? And you came to realize, again, over time, it was just the way he worked. But, oh no, that's not helpful. It's not conducive to good work.
What are some other mistakes that are common that you've run into? Sure.
One of the things that I find is a bigger problem is that often a director will have a very clear idea in their mind how they want the end result to be. And they will start to basically tell you what they want the end result to be. They won't give you a chance to explore those options, so kind of what we were talking about before, but they'll tell you specifically. By this moment, by this line right here, I would like to see you get to this high point of emotionality. Okay, that's an end result, but can you give me some, how do you want me to get there? Can we talk about the process? Can we talk about what's going on for this character at this moment? You're saying you want this huge moment here, but we haven't done any of the work to get there. And so it's those things where the director is looking for the end result.
Just stop there for a second.
Sure.
I would have thought that setting the direction of where you want them to go would be much more helpful than say, here's the steps you take to get there. And it sounds like you're saying just the opposite.
Well, you don't want to say, here's the steps, because that's the actor's process. The actor's going to have to find those steps for themselves. And you might talk about it from the script point of view. That is to say, this is right here. There's a transition. Right here, there's a pivot point. Right here, there's you're building up to this moment. But then here's where I think you have an epiphany. You understand what's going on, and then you make a transition. That sort of thing. That's great. But if they say, I want you to be in tears. I want you to be, I need this here. That's a little awkward because really what you should, if I were, to take on that director's point of view, would be more, here are the stakes. Here's what's going on for you. Here is emotionally where you should be for me. Here's explaining the situation. This is your daughter is dying, whatever the situation is, and really getting into the understanding of what is the emotional content of the scene. Then let the actor do what they're doing. And if you build it up with the right information, emotional information, the actor will do the scene, the actress will do the scene, and they'll get to that point, And it'll happen. It'll absolutely happen. But if they're thinking about it, if they're in their head going, right here is the part I have to cry, never going to happen. And if it does, it'll be false.
Well, how would you contrast the ability of a television director when you've only got 8 days to do an hour show versus a theatrical director where you've got 4 weeks or 8 weeks? Is it unrealistic to assume that somebody that's a filmmaker that's trying to get that whole thing shot in a day, can they even do that kind of dramatic coaching?
No, generally they don't. Sitcom is sort of the mid-ground, but you're right. Movies and hour shows, these are 16-hour days. There's not a lot of coaching going on. Pretty much you got cast because you could do the job. If they thought you couldn't, you wouldn't have been cast. And if you show up and they probably won't give you coaching, you'll do your best job, and they'll say, great, wrap, next scene. If they don't say that, there's a good chance you'll get one note. And if it's going on to the third note, you're probably about to be released. It's a tough business. But sitcom, it's a longer form. It's 5 days, but it's only a half-hour show. They're doing rehearsals. They're rehearsing it like a little mini play. So you get a little bit of that theater experience. It can be a little looser. And then doing it usually in front of a live audience and that sort of thing. So if it's kind of this hybrid. And then, theater is, you're all chummy. You're all having beers after the rehearsals. It's a lot more fun.
Today you're actively involved in theater. Are you more interested in acting or directing?
It's changed. Toward the end of my professional acting career, because, as you know, I'm the director of marketing for your companies. But toward the end of my professional career, I was kind of getting to the point where it was diminishing returns. You were going out for guest stars in series regular, and now you're going out for co-stars, smaller roles again. And you go, I don't want to do that. That's not the route I want to go. My daughter was born. So, you make a transition, you make a shift. But I have been directing theater because it's something that I can do, something I can do while also having a full-time job. And it's joyful. So as much as I do enjoy acting still, and I will still gladly perform in a show, directing has it's the whole enchilada. It allows me to explore all of those performances, plus the technical, plus the direction of the piece. It's very exciting.
Are you a good director or a bad director?
You'd have to ask the actors I work with.
James, thanks for joining us today. James Castle-Stevens is an actor and a director, also the director of marketing here at our company. James, thanks for joining us today.
This is Tech Talk from the Digital Production Buzz.
I'm a big fan of Adobe Audition, as you know. We can send project video to Audition via dynamic link, so let's go back to this project. Let us pretend that Dr. Surf is a fully edited project and we're ready to do the sound mix. We can do the mix inside Premiere, but Premiere's mixer is essentially a clip mixer. It's not a track mixer, and we don't have access to all the wonderful tools we have inside Audition, but we could send the project over before. That has been around for a long time, but then we'd have to do a separate export of the video and compress the video, and now it's all really easy. Select the project, go up to Edit, go down to Edit in Adobe Audition, and select Sequence. Notice we're giving it a name. We'll call it Morph Cut. There used to be 4 choices here where we would have to create a video, but we don't have to do that anymore. That's done automatically. We're going to send the entire sequence. We're going to send it through dynamic link. What dynamic link means is that we no longer need to render the video, export the video, generate the video. Audition is going to work with the exact same video files that Premiere is. It's going to treat it as though it's editing the video in Premiere. And now when I click OK, watch what happens. It automatically says, do we want to do it? I did it before, so I'm getting rid of it. It exports the file. It starts Audition. It loads the audio into Audition, and it's automatically got the video file as a single piece of video. We don't even see the clips. up here. And we can now do our mixing until we are happy. And then to send our file back to Premiere, we go up to Multitrack, go down to Export to Adobe Premiere Pro. We can then decide that we want to export each track as a stem. We can mix the entire project down to a mono file, a stereo file, or a surround file, or all three. Have it automatically open Premiere and say, where do we want to place the audio file? This round tripping between Premiere and Audition is smoother than it has ever been, and what Adobe has done is take the hardest part of the process, which is creating the standalone video file and making sure it's synced to audio. That's now automatic, dynamic link, no rendering, no exporting, just click. Really smooth.
This Tech Talk was shared from Larry Jordan's website at larryjordan.com.
Cinematographer Kali Pozaria loves creating unique and emotional images with lighting and camera work. She's focused on developing an organized, creative, and collaborative approach to her filmmaking, which fits in well with what the collaboration between actor and director that we were just discussing. Hello, Kali, welcome.
Hi, Larry. How are you?
We are having fun here today. It's good to have you with us. What first attracted you to cinematography?
I guess the first time I, was interested in cinematography was probably when my dad took me to an IMAX film up in Cleveland when I was a little kid. And we had gone to see a National Geographic film about natural wonders. And it was a really immersive experience. And when I was watching the film, all I could think was, wow, this is amazing. How did they film this? Where did they go? Or how did they make this film? And at that time, I had no idea what cinematographer was. But then later on, my dad was into photography, and he bought me a point-and-shoot camera, and I kind of just practiced taking pictures. And once I got into high school, I got a little interested in doing art. So I thought, okay, what can I do that would be part of my creative side, but then still be able to make a living off of that? And then I learned about filmmaking and cinematography, and I kind of just took a leap and applied to film school. So I had no previous film experience before going to film school.
Where did you go to school?
I went to New York University. I did the Tisch film and TV program.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I know that program very well. As you were doing your work, do you find yourself more interested in camera work or lighting?
Oh, that's a tough one. I like both so much. I think it's a little bit of both, because the cinematographer is going to, each cinematographer I've worked with or met personally, coming up through the ranks, they each have their strong suit. One usually comes up through camera, or one comes up through lighting. But, part of that is a collaborative process, right? And so the reason, you're part of the team and you're looking over everything, but the reason you have a strong gaffer, for example, would be maybe you're strong at camera, so you make sure you get a strong gaffer so that you can have someone kind of, push you in the lighting and kind of steer you for certain things that you may not know. Whereas, some DPs who are strong at lighting, they'll get a really strong first AC, assistant cameraman. So, and I've enjoyed both. I've AC'd and I've gaffed, and I can't really pick one of the, departments over the other. That's why I want to be a cinematographer. So
how would I had a chance to watch your Skylar Reed video, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But before we do, how would you describe your style?
I would describe my style as somewhat experimental. I like to film dramatic and dark films. The short films that I've worked on have mainly had some really personal stories, but then dark, emotional characters in them. So we've gotten to shoot and kind of push the cameras into the darks and see how much they can handle. Since most of the stuff I've done has been digital, you can only go so much before it becomes noisy or, you lose the ability to adjust it in post. So I guess my style is more of like a dark style. I like really contrasty stuff, but that's just what I've done most of. And the Skylar Reed project was very different for me. That was a project where she came to me and she said, I want to have scenes that are really bright and, somewhat nostalgic. And I said, okay, so tell me more. And then we came up with the idea of flashback scenes that had a really bright window light kind of pouring through the scene. And so that wasn't necessarily what I've worked on or what I like, that I immediately get attracted to, but I figured if the project sounded great, and it really being a cinematographer is working with the director and adjusting your style or adjusting your approach to what they need for the project. And so that's why the project was exciting to me. It was really different than some of the stuff I had worked on, and would give me a chance to mess around with some lighting that I haven't really done a lot of. So.
You were mentioning the fact that you tend to like really dark scenes and stuff where lighting is much more an element of the film itself. Was that something that you evolved on your own, or have you adopted this from looking at other films? In other words, what's influenced your style?
I think it's a little bit of both. We got to shoot 16 millimeter in school, which allowed us to really work with a bigger dynamic range than some of the digital cameras at the time. And digital cameras in the past 3 years have come so far in how much dynamic range they can handle, from the highlights to the darks. So, people they have more ability to light into the dark or into the brightness too. So, I would say that, it's partly from watching films like Apocalypse Now, which have some like really contrasty dark, or very stylized scenes, to, watching, I don't know, there's so many different films and cinematographers that I like that have kind of influenced me, but then like I said before, I don't necessarily want to limit myself because I'm so early in my career, and that's why I want to take on more projects just like Skylar's, where I can keep adopting my style and keep changing with the cameras and kind of the medium.
Well, thinking of cameras, do you have a favorite camera? Is the one that works especially well in low-light situations?
I would say film in certain instances, but I was actually surprised. Some of the Canon cameras are actually pretty good in low light situation. There's a camera that they have called 1DC, which is like one of their 4K DSLR cameras. And there's a website called cinematography.net where one of the DPs who runs that site had done a test with that camera against a Red, Sony cameras, other Canon cameras, including like the C300 and other production level cameras. And that camera actually surprisingly did really good in a candlelight test. And it had a very low noise ratio. And so I want to do a little bit more with that camera in low light. But other than that, I think it's more about when you're shooting in low light, knowing how to light it. So even if whatever camera you have, it shouldn't feel limited. I know that, for example, Blackmagic, they just came out with a new camera, and some of the issues that they had with their previous camera versions was that the ISO doesn't go over, 800 or, 1600, I think, without getting really noisy. So, whatever camera you have, it's about learning how to light so you can get the most out of that sensor. So to answer your question, I don't have a favorite camera for low light. It's more about knowing what gear you have and knowing how to get the most out of it. And I've shot with like Red and Canon and Sony cameras and even ARRI cameras as well. But it's just about knowing the dynamic range and how many stops you can go down before you're just going to hit the noise floor. So, no, it's probably not the best answer. I'm sure if I gave you like a straightforward answer, like this is the camera to use for low light, someone would come around and say, no, there's this camera, or some manufacturer would call me up and say, why did you say that?
When you were shooting Skylar Reed, what was your goal in terms of lighting, and what gear in that particular video, what gear do you use to shoot it?
We used the Canon C300, the Mark 1. They just had a Mark 2 come out, but it was the previous. So.
And were you spend a lot of time with lighting, or were you working with natural light? I know many of the scenes were outside rather than inside, but did you have a lot of light gear with you?
So for all the interior stuff, we supplemented daylight. So we did get a full lighting kit with Kino flows and tungsten Fresnels. And with the exterior stuff, it just depended. Most of it was just bounce board or using natural light. But I think the key to that was all of the locations that we had, we did location scouts. Like I myself did multiple location scouts to a few of the locations, just to know what time of day we should be scheduling things, what kind of light we would want. So, there's a scene where we're under a dock at Manhattan Beach, and we went there in the morning, but then I was like, if the sun was over there, near the horizon, then we would get more light under the dock, and also it would be really nice because it would be giving you a nice backlight. So that's what we, factored in when we were scheduling. So because we were such a low budget production, we couldn't really, have a whole full production on the beach, or, get a permit for Manhattan Beach and get lights over there and all that other stuff. So we, some of our locations were like that, where we just had a bounce in there just to fill her a little bit. And we relied on natural light and just trying to get the shots what we needed, and then moving on to the other locations so we wouldn't lose this type of sunlight we needed for that location. So,
as you look back on your shoots, do you remember the good parts, or do you remember the stuff that didn't turn out so well? Which sticks in your head the most?
Actually, for this shoot, there wasn't really anything bad about the shoot. This shoot was extremely smooth. I would say there would not be any bad parts that I remember. I think probably I don't even know what the hardest thing about the actual music video shoot was. It was really smooth. We planned everything as much as we could, did as much pre-production as we possibly could, and then we made sure we hired people that knew what they were doing. Even though it's a low-budget shoot, like I said, the most important part is to just hire who will show up and who will do a good job, and you won't have to necessarily coach them to do their job. But I think probably the hardest part about our shoot was trying to get extras, and we had a couple scenes that we wanted more extras. For example, the park scene. If you watch the music video, there's a scene where there's people trying to hustle in the park, one girl selling CDs and another guy selling flowers or whatever they're doing in the park, and they're supposed to be scattered throughout, and Skylar Reed, the musician, is supposed to be singing. And, they all on their own hear her singing and get attracted to her voice and come to her and kind of, listen, because that's her hustle, is singing, trying to make money on the street singing. And so I think that was the hardest scene, because we were like, we don't have enough people to make it look like a lot of people. And I know that usually when you get a good AD and you have like a small room or something, you can make it look like a lot of people by having people pass the camera multiple times, or, placing them so you see a different side of their face, or have them change their shirt or whatever, small stuff like that. But, we're shooting in a park. So that was probably a difficult thing, was we only have like 8 extras. What do? We don't have a huge group, but it looked fine to me. And I think it was almost more realistic that we didn't have a huge crowd come and be attracted to her voice. It felt like this is more real, 2 or 3 people come and get interested. It's not necessarily like a huge crowd. So it probably was for the better. So I remember the good stuff.
Thinking about that, in the little bit of time we've got left, how do you get involved with post? Are you involved with the editing at all, and do you get involved with color correction, or does the color grade go to the director?
So with, low budget productions, I've been asked to do the color correction on a few projects, but I don't generally color correct. I have been dabbling with it a little bit, and I do have experience color correcting on a couple projects. But for Skylar's, I actually ended up doing the color correction because we couldn't find someone who fit. I don't know as many people here in LA as I do in New York. And so, I was posting on Mandy looking for someone to color correct with. And I was just, I don't know, I just ended up saying, you know what, I'll just do it for you because we don't really have the budget to pay someone super professional to do it. And we just didn't find the right person in that low budget range.
And
so.
Cully, what website can people go to learn more about your work?
Oh, my website is cposeria, C as in cat, P as in Peter, O as in ostrich, S as in Sam, E as in elephant, R as in ram, I as in igloo, A as in apple. So cposeria.com or .wix.com and then /CPDP. But you should go to Larry Jordan's website and get my website off of there.
Cully, thanks so very much for joining us. Cully Poseria is a cinematographer, and you can see her website at cposeria.wix.com/CPDP. Cully, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye. It's been a heck of a show, and I want to thank our guests for today. We started with Starr Ackerman, musician and gear guru, and then James Castle Stevens, the actor, and Cully Poseria, cinematographer, and, of course, Randy Altman, the editor-in-chief of PostPerspective.com. There's a lot of history in our industry, and it's all posted to our website at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Here you'll find thousands of interviews, all searchable, all online, and all available. You can talk with us on Twitter at DPBuzz and Facebook at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Our theme music composed by Nathan Doogie Turner. Additional music provided by smartsound.com. Text transcripts provided by Take One Transcription. Visit takeone.tv to learn more. Our producer, Serena Catania. Engineering, led by Megan Paulos, includes Keegan Guy, Eileen Kim, and Brianna Murphy. On behalf of Mike Horton, my name is Larry Jordan, and thanks for listening to the Digital Production Buzz.
The Digital Production Buzz was brought to you by Otherworld Computing, providing quality hardware solutions and extensive technical support to the worldwide computer industry since 1988.